Hello everyone, welcome back with me. Today I'm gonna present to you my final term. So let's go to number one. We got number one is First is poetry. Please read loudly the poem entitled Hope, written by Emily Dickinson. After that, tell about short biography of Emily Dickinson and analysis of her poems. So this is my answer. Hope is subtle blatant, if it upon the fair, and yet inspected closely, what abstinence is there? He is the halcyon stable that never said but once, and whatsoever it consumes, the same amount remains. So this is the poem that written by Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson was born on December 10, 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts. She attended Mount Holyoke Female Seminary in South Hadley, but only for 1 year. Her father, Edward Dickinson, was actively involved in state and national politics, serving in Congress for one term. Her brother Austin, his name is Austin, who attended law school and became an attorney, lived next door with his wife, Susan Gilbert. Dickinson's younger sister, Lavinia, also lived at home, and she and Austin were intellectual companions for Dickinson during her lifetime. Dickinson's poetry was heavily influenced by the metaphysical poets of 17th century England, as well as her reading of the books of Revelations and her upbringing in a Puritan New England town, which encouraged a Calvinist, Orthodox, and conservative approach to Christianity like that. Although she continued to write in her last year, Dickinson stopped editing and organizing her poem. She also exacted a promise from her sister Lavinia to burn her paper. Lavinia, who never married, remains the homestead until her own death in 1899. So I'm gonna analyze about her poems. After I read one of the Emily Dickinson's famous poems, and I have also told you who Emily Dickinson is, I will analyze his poetry. The poem entitled Hope, written by Emily here, is type of the modern poetry and is not classified as an old poem. As from this poem, it was two stanzas, where each stanza has 4 lines. This poem is classic. If we would, I mean, poem is classified as a quantitative type of poetry when viewed based on itself. It viewed based on its context. This poem is included in the type of ode poetry, and that is the type of poetry that contains praise to people who are meritorious or the country or something noble like that. Well, everyone, we headed to number 2, but before I continue to answer it, I'm gonna read the instructions. Read the novel. After that, tell the review of novel Oliver Twist, written by Charles Dickens, as follows. Number 1 is short biography of Charles Dickens. The second is summary of Oliver Twist's novel. Third, character and characteristic in Oliver Twist's novel. Alright, I'm gonna answer it. The short biography of Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was an English writer and social critic. During his lifetime, his work enjoyed unprecedented popularity. She is now considered a literary genius because she's created some of the world's best known fictional characters and is regarded as the greatest novelist of the Victorian era. His novel and short story enjoy lasting popularity. Dickens was born on February 7, 1812 in Portsmouth, on the southern coast of England. His father, John Dickens, was a naval clerk who dreamed of becoming rich, and his mother, Elizabeth Barrow, aspired to be a teacher and school director. But the family financial situation had grown worse because John Dickens used to spend money dangerously beyond the family means. Consequently, John was sent to the prison for debt in 1824 when Charles was just 12 years old. Charles Dickens died on June 9, 1870 of a stroke. He was buried in a pot corner at the Westminster Abbey. Thousands of mourners came to pay their respect at the grave and throw in flowers. We headed to number 2. The question is, tell the summary of Oliver Twist's novel. Well, the novel follows the journey of the titular character, Oliver Twist. Oliver, an orphan since birth, spent much of his childhood at a child farm named Orphanage. With too many children and too little food, the farm is located roughly 70 miles outside London. One night, after being served his portions of gruel, Oliver asked for a second helping. This is unacceptable, and Oliver is sent to work as an apprentice to an undertaker. Eventually, after suffering repeated mistreatments, Oliver runs away and heads for London. He soon finds himself in the presence of the Arthur Dodger, who tells him to stay at the house of an old gentleman. Oliver assumes that he now rid of the Fagins and pickpocket, but his knowledge of their crimes causes them to speak Oliver out. Nancy, a prostitute and mistress of the one Fagin's man, Bill Sykes, is sent to take Oliver from Mr. Brownlow back to the Fagin. She does so successfully, and Oliver is sent on a burglary mission with another member of the group to, the countryside around London. On these errands, Oliver is shot in the arm and then is taken by the family named the Mylies that he attempts to rob. While he is there, Fagin and man named Mr. Monks plot to get him back. Rose Miley, while on the trip to London with her family, meet with Mr. Brownlow to talk with Nancy, who was slipped away from Sykes to explain the plans made by Monks and Fagin to get Oliver back. She described Monks and told them when he might most easy to be apprehended. Unfortunately for Nancy, news of her betrayal reaches Sykes, and he beat her to death. Sykes accidentally hangs himself soon after. The Mylies reunite Oliver with Mr. Brownlow, who forces Monk to explain himself. The reader and Oliver are then informed that Monk is Oliver's half-brother, and that Oliver is entitled to large fortunes. He receives his share of the money. Fagin is hung, and the Mylies, Oliver and Mr. Brownlow move to the countryside, where they spend the rest of their days together. After I read the summary of the novels, I'm gonna answer the third question. its character and characteristic in Oliver Twist's novel? Well, if we read the novel entitled Oliver Twist, we will find at least 7 important characters. They are no other than: first is Oliver. He is a hero and main character of the story. He is an orphan and his true identity is hidden from the reader until the end of the novel. And second is Fagin. Fagin. What is supposed to say that? He's an old man in London who teaches young homeless boy how to be pickpocket and avenges their stolen goods. Although a miser and exploiter, he shown a certain loyalty and solicitude toward the boys. The character of Fagin from Oliver Twist is a violence, described as mean and sinister. He attacks homeless boy. Number 30 is Nancy. She was once one Fagin's pickpocket when she was younger and has since grown up with the crime all around her. Despite this, she has a good heart and it's portrayed as a heroine in the novel. She is one of the noblest characters in the story. Number 4 is Mr. Brownlow. Mr. Brownlow is a rich gentleman who treats Oliver with kindness and compassion. Even though he is a wealthy man, Mr. Brownlow has faced many difficult things in his life and takes pity on Oliver. He takes Oliver into his own home and looks after him. Number 5 is Bill Sykes. Bill Sykes is a professional burglar and very violent and nasty man. He was also owns a pickpocket invasion group and was brought up around crime his entire life, and he treats his girlfriend Nancy very badly. And those are some important characters in Oliver Twist novel. There are actually 5 characters, the 5 important characters, not 7. Pardon me. Alright everyone, let's head to number 30. So before that, as usually, I'm gonna read the instructions before I answer it. The instruction is: what's the story wrong number? Drama from YouTube channels. After that, tell summary of the drama and answer the following questions. Number 1 is: where does Mr. Stevens suddenly go away to on a business trip? Number 2, what does Mr. Stevenson overhear on the phone when trying to contact her husband? Number 3, in what city does the play take place? And the last question is: what is the primary motivation for Mr. Stevenson's killer? After I watch a drama video entitled Sorry, Wrong Number, I will try to answer some questions that have been asked to me before. The first question is: where did Mr. Stevenson suddenly go for a business trip? Well, the correct answer is Mr. Stevenson went to Boston unexpectedly when he was about to leave for the business trip. The next question is: what does Mr. Stevenson overhear on the phone when trying to contact her husband? Well, the correct answer is Mr. Stevenson was about to call her husband, but was started by the conversation between 2 men planning a murder. This can happen because it turns out Mr. Stevenson made a wrong call when he tried to call his husband. Number 3, moving on the next questions, which is: in what city does the play take place? For this question, the correct answer is that the setting in this drama in New York, a big city in the US. Then move to the question number 4, namely: what is the primary motivation for Mr. Stevenson's killer? Well, Stevenson has to be killed by her husband, Hitman, because she is unhealthy. The Hitman was George. He is the murderer. He takes his order from the first man. He has to take care of his wife all the time, so he is disgusted with it, and that's why he wanted to kill his wife. That's all. Well, my friends, thank you for staying with me while I'm talking. Thank you very much, and see you next time.